Can we not do that? And what kind of regions would the youths find attractive enough to move into? There is an island in Shimane Prefecture which dramatically increased the inflow of people into the island. Let's see what they did. This is Amacho, a town on Okinoshima Island in Shimane Prefecture. It is inhabited by 2,300 people. They are seeing an increase in the number of youths moving into this town. A rush to construct housing has started. The backdrop to this migration of people is a generous system of support which the town has pioneered in the nation. We are a forerunner in facing challenges of emerging issues, so if we can demonstrate a successful case, this would spread elsewhere. In my view, it would spark a natural process of change. This is someone who moved in 2 years ago with his dream of becoming a fisherman. This is Seiya Takano. He's 32 years old. Takano started to farm oysters, a local specialty. The town provided him with a loan of 150,000 yen a month for 3 years to cover his living expenses until his business became self-standing. It was a great attraction that the support was extremely generous compared to other regions. Support is also given to startups by people who have moved in. One such example is the company that sells seafood, including oysters. We have expanded our sales channel as far as the United States and Dubai. The turnover of this company is in excess of 200 million yen per annum. The company was funded by support from the town. Here's the funding support scheme. The town solicits applications from all over the nation to receive funding. The funding is in units of 500,000 yen. Interest is payable in kind, that is, specialty products of the region in lieu of cash. The capital portion is to be paid back by the owner of the business, but in the event that he is unable to do so, the town advances the money and provides a guarantee. Fourteen businesses were started up anew using this funding scheme. Because of the influx of younger people, this preschool is flooded with applications for enrollment. We are surprised at the large number of children. 10 years after the start of this funding assistance scheme, the total number of people who have moved in is over 430. So this was the approach taken in Amacho in Shimane Prefecture. The smiles on the faces of the children are quite impressive. Yes, it's a great atmosphere. Mr. Schumann, even in a small island, depending on how they do it, they can generate employment. That was an actual example. What is your view?
Well, I see this all the time going on in rural communities in the United States. We know a great deal about how to create jobs in small places. You need to identify business opportunities by analyzing gaps in the economy where people are unnecessarily buying outside goods and services. You need entrepreneurship programs to train people. You need partnerships among local businesses so they are more competitive as a team, perhaps through co-ops than they would be individually. You need local purchasing to help those small businesses thrive, and you need local capital to help propel those businesses forward. My one caveat about what AMA has done, and I think this is true for many economic development programs worldwide, is that there was perhaps too much government involvement. And we should think of ways that the private sector can undertake some of the functions of economic development. And we are seeing more and more businesses in North America that are becoming economic development businesses.
Dr. Holstein, in Germany, the local government, which you just saw, provided a considerable amount of support to the migrants. Would Altena think about doing something like this?
We already did something in this way. We have a beautiful castle, and we try to create tourism business as a function of creating working places. But we need fair competitions between the mega cities and the rural areas. So without money, you can take no step into the future and to be innovative. So the question we saw in the short trailer is, are there people who are thinking innovative, and have they the resources to start the first steps into the future with the help of money, of course?
Yes, Mr. Tsuda, you've actually visited Amma. So, what is it about Amma that attracts people? In a nutshell, it's the people. The people there are such that those who find these people attractive do an I-turn and challenge different things. In the VCR, it wasn't explained sufficiently, but when the mayor became a mayor of Amma, he did a drastic job of cost-cutting. The local government wages of the local government, he reduced it to the lowest standard in Japan, and that was only a defensive step. But they introduced a system of casts, which involved an involvement of 500 million yen. And this enabled them to send fish food fresh. It was a logistics approach. And they did these things properly. And regularly, people come to visit the town. And when they come to visit, during the nighttime, from the mayor to the education head to the welfare head, welcome these people, even if it's in the evening. If there are youths that look competent, they persuade them that it's very enjoyable to live there, and they ask them, when are you moving in? And they do this very often. And so these people actually move in, and they involve themselves in education. There's a high school with a dormitory. The school was on the verge of collapsing and closing, but it's thriving now, and their education standard is going up. So various approaches are being taken in terms of education as well. So education for those rearing children is very important. Yes, it's an island, so they can only go up to high school. So career education is offered at the high school level. They become adults and they acquire further knowledge and come back to the island to contribute to the island. They increase the number of classes in Amma. And there are foreign students, there are students from Dubai. These are Japanese, but coming to this place to get education. That is the extent to which the place is attractive. In the regions, some regions do not have high schools, so that in itself encourages people to move out. Professor Chon in Korea, Mr. Chon is an expert on farm villages and villages in the mountains and the depopulated areas. What is your view of the film? Yes, I was looking at this trailer, and I felt that I wanted to introduce something like that in Korea as well, for the regions to cooperate. Would enable even the small areas to do something big. This VCR was an example of that. It's a great place, and they played on its merits in the agricultural areas or in islands. There are factors not only encouraging people to move out, but there are attractions, schools and other facilities and workplaces. These were created, so that was quite moving and impressive. In the case of Korea, in certain areas, similar efforts are underway. They cooperate with business and have support from the government to do something similar. But for the moment, There are towns being created in the regions, but when it comes to islands or villages in mountains or fishing villages, the extent of outflow of population is so large so that they're faced with many issues. And so in a certain sense, the factors to develop the population is such that in Korea we're 10 years, 20 years behind Japan. But when it comes to depopulation in agricultural villages, fishing villages, it's more serious in Korea. So Korea should look at Japan and learn many things. The approaches taken in Amma. Mr. Tsuda pointed out that it was the people that was key. And Mr. Schuman talked about too much involvement by the government or by the administration. And Dr. Holstein said it's money after all. Perhaps he has his position as mayor to think of. He said that funding was important. From here on, we'd like to talk about the different ideas of the regions and what kind of support can the central government provide to the regions. Mr. Schuman, you alluded that there was too much involvement by the government and that there should be more voluntary effort on the part of businesses. So for the businesses to be more forthcoming and voluntary, are there measures to induce them to take these steps?
Absolutely. And I think there are not only ways the government can spend money, but there are ways that the government can get rid of regulations that stand in the way of entrepreneurship. And let me give you an example. In Nova Scotia, they realized in the late 1990s that 98% of their pension fund savings were leaving the province. So they changed their laws and made it easier for community groups to create grassroots investment funds that now support the expansion of local food businesses. Many of them are also supporting farms as well. There are so many of these grassroots investment funds in Nova Scotia right now that if you had as many in Japan per capita, you would have about 10,000. So think of opening up capital markets for local reinvestment as something the government can do if it's prepared to change securities laws.
Dr. Holstein, for the regions, what kind of support do they need from the central government?
They need a framework of fair competition. As an example, if the mayor of Tokyo would phone with a prime minister with a new, bringing to him a new project, he will perhaps get money. If the same will do a mayor of a town in the rural area, he won't get a phone connection. So we need indeed fair competition between the mega cities and the rural areas, and we need a competition between the rural areas themselves. So there will be winners and losers, of course. This was in history at any time the same. But to give people the framework to be more innovative, they need no bureaucracy. They need more flexibility to bring out their ideas and to be creative. And in this field, I agree with American experts, but they don't need it only in the economic sector. They even need it in the public sector and in the educational sector and for the infrastructure.
Mr. Eberstadt, to create attractive regions, Mr. Schuman has said that deregulation is important, but Dr. Holstein said that to create an equal level playing field is important. What is your take, Mr. Eberstadt?
I don't think that Mr. Schuman and Dr. Holstein were at cross purposes. They were talking about different aspects of policies that, in a sense, I think are complementary. And I think the points they made were very good. I'd like to add an additional point, maybe a kind of a radical one. Every big democracy that's a market system also has politically induced distortions in its macroeconomy. I could talk about Americas, but we're talking about Japan here. Two of the enormous distortions for Japan are the zero interest rate policy that's been in effect for decades now, and the very, very high level of support for agricultural subsidies. Just do the thought experiment. What would happen to innovation and dynamism if the zombie companies supported by the zero interest rate policy had to redistribute their assets to more dynamic sectors? What would happen in the rural areas if land prices were not artificially so high? Wouldn't there be people who would want to be moving in? Wouldn't it be cheaper to move in? It's worth thinking these sorts of things through.
Ms. Eberstadt talked about financial and monetary policy, and agriculture was mentioned. Let us hear what the people of the world think. In a world, a society where the population is declining, what is necessary to revitalize the local economy? These are views of the people
For a
of the
lot of
world.
these regions here in Hokkaido, there's a lot of great farmland. And very few farms have successors in place. There's also I think the average age of the Japanese farmer now is over 65. And so if we're talking about revitalizing rural areas, eventually this is going to become a sense of domestic food production crisis as well, if it's not already. So, I think things like that become opportunities, how to find creative ways.
There are changes that would favor people staying in the rural areas because we have better technology of communication, we have better technology of transport, and there are even some lifestyle changes where people like to go back to the countryside and live there if the conditions are possible, and the conditions are, as you know, better. And then the rural areas can be attractive again.
Okinawa is a land of hope. The level of economic indicators of the place is extremely low. But if you go there, their lives are affluent. That is because they are self-sufficient to a certain degree, there's a regional community, and there are families. True, they may not have money, but they have food to eat, and it's not as if they cannot eat because they do not have the money. They are affluent. Okinawa may serve as a test case in thinking about such a world. There was a comment about Okinawa. Okinawa has the lowest average wage level in Japan, but the highest birth rate. So perhaps it's about people's ways of thinking and their values which are involved here. There are tweets which said that shifting values is important. Thinking about the future of local regions, what is required? Could you state a keyword which is essential to the future of the local regions? Professor Chong in Korea, please. I believe that a political will is necessary. Japanese government leaders and the intellectuals should get together and overcome the issue of declining birth rates and solve the issue of the declining population. Not at the political level, but worldwide, this issue will spread. And to rescue the agricultural cities and regions, the government and intellectuals and the political will are necessary. Dr. Holstein, please.
In my eyes, we need a framework for innovation and creativity for the smaller towns, and the rest will the management of the mayors in the smaller town do to have their own way into a good future beneath the big mega cities.
Mr. Schumann, could we have your take on this?
My key phrase is local self-reliance. Every rural community has the capacity to become a great economic place if they encourage entrepreneurship and are able to reinvest in themselves. There is no savior from a government authority. There is no savior from an outside corporation. You have to do it yourself.
Mr. Eberstadt, what is the key word, please?
My key word is prosperity. If the localities can generate prosperity, the question of depopulation will solve itself. If the society is prosperous and these problems cannot be solved locally, a prosperous society can subsidize the sustenance of these areas. But prosperity is the key.
ここまで海外の皆さんから
From the foreign participants, we have heard views. Professor Chung talked about political will, and Dr. Holstein talked about the framework for innovation to prepare the environment. And Mr. Schumann talked about regions becoming self-standing and independent. And Mr. Eberstadt said, above all, prosperity, regional prosperity, would feed largely into the solution of the problem. Now, taking into consideration all of these views, Japan is a forerunner in terms of different issues, including a decline of population. And so the world is focusing on how things pan out in Japan. What is the status of the region as it ought to be going forward? Not only the local government heads, but the residents of the region must share a sense of crisis. The decline in population is such that it's very difficult to face it. People tend to turn a blind eye because people feel a hankering for the lives that they had in the past. But what is important is creating a place that's easy to live for the future generations, and you have to focus on that. Is it providing them with a place of work, or is it education? There are different factors for the future generations. What will they be thinking? And what is the regions that they will be looking for? That would be the starting point for all of the approaches. I think that would be important. And for this, we need to make a mental switch over. To what extent we can share the sense of crisis is very important. There was a tweet here. In the 21st capital, Piketty, Dr. Piketty says that distribution is the key. In what way we distribute? The resources are limited. So distribution is a very important point. As Dr. Piketty points out, the problem of disparity is under focus now. Whether it's growth or distribution, we need to strike a right balance in a proper way. Distribution alone isn't the problem. We need to face these issues squarely. Mr. Tsuda, in Japan, the youths will be shouldering Japan in the future. So when we think about this, there were different views aired today, but there's the problem of the regions and the problem of Japan. How are we to view this? The key word is to just do it, just do things. Whether it's Ama or whether it's Tokushima, Kamikatsu, or other places, there are regions that are successful, and they have points in common. They're bold about accepting ideas, and the youth's views aren't suppressed by the seniors. So to try things, even from outsiders, I asked them why they were so willing to accept for outsiders' views, and